Kolkata has such amazing ghats. I mean, just
Nicely
go,
done.
go and spend some time with your loved and dear ones. So there are multiple problems concerning the river. I think just focusing on Ganga Arati and just focusing on to making the ghats more beautiful is not going to solve majority of the problem.
But how has your relationship been with 2 years with Tanmoy Babu?
The first thing he told me is that, do you see these two drumsticks? These are your antibiotics if you don't do riyaz.
Welcome and hello. Well, we always say hello and welcome, but I guess everything can be done in a way that we feel like. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Make Calcutta Relevant Again, the podcast. I'm here today with Pubarun Basu, somebody who's been highly recommended by Pauline as a rising star in the world of sustainability and photography. And although I do not really have a lot of context about Pubarun and his work, we figured, hey, why not do a podcast? So we get to know a little bit more about each other. There are 3 things for now that I know about Pubarun. First one is that he comes from a lineage of photography. His father was a photographer himself. Number 2, he recently gave a TED talk which was sent to me by 15 different people. I do not know why. So we'll get to know more about this TED talk as well. And 3, Pubarun's mom and I were at the same wedding earlier this week, which is when I got to understand, again, 2 things. One, just like any other Bengali mom, Pubarun's mom is supremely fond of her son. And 2, just like most Bengali moms, does not really understand what Pubarun does. So this episode is going to be about demystifying what Pubarun is, who Pubarun is, and the raz behind his very flashy brown jacket. We like it. I hope it's not real leather, is it?
I think it is.
Oh God.
Bershka.
Okay, Bershka. We have to talk about the fashion industry as well. You work a little bit in sustainability.
Yeah.
We're going to find places where we will find ourselves outside of our comfort zones today. So on that note, Pubarun, let's begin. The rising star of sustainability and photography and the winner of 2021 Youth Photography Awards by Sony.
Perfect. There you go.
Sony has been plugged in. They're happy. Yeah. Pubarun, over to you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you, Meghdut. I have to begin by saying how much I'm fond of you and the work that you do, because all my life, I think it has been a journey about making things relevant from my city, from my identity. And now to see someone, forging the path for me, for the rest of the young rising, talents from the city is really, really, like a real soft corner in my heart. So thank you for doing whatever you do. You were mentioning the word rising star, but I just have to clarify. My name also means kind of very similar. It's
Pubarun. That's
Pubarun.
right. I did not even think of that pun. Right?
It's Pub and Orun. So Pub is the east and Orun is the sun. So it's the rising sun, the sun of the east.
Yeah.
And I was
you are a
named by
son
my
of the east.
Yeah, I mean the east,
Also.
but from West Bengal.
Yeah.
But then, I cannot remember a time when I was not taking photographs. I mean, that's how long I go back with photography. And as you mentioned, my dad, he was a photographer, a prolific photographer, a printmaker, one of the most celebrated art photographers of his time.
What
And
was his name?
his name was Pranab Bosu. And he used to document everything. He did not judge photography based on its genre. He used to do weddings, he used to do nature, he used to do wildlife. He would go and document Pandit Birju Maharaj ji, Ustad Amzad Ali Khan, Ustad Zakir Hussain ji. And the reason that I'm doing this is because I'm also a student of Indian classical music.
I could figure.
So he took me to my Guruji, Pandit Tanmoy Bose, at the tender age of 6. And then I started learning, and you know how dads are, Indian dads and Desi dads, trying to put their aspirations on their sons. So I
Did
think...
it work out well for you? Do you think you being pushed into classical music somehow shaped the way that you look at the world?
Definitely. I think classical music is one core part of my identity. It has become similarly, I think for you, how the way you would sing those songs with a guitar with Pauline and all those really really authentic and core Bengali songs. I think for me it's all about classical calculations going on in my head, because Indian classical music is all about how to break the rules. So and improvisation for sure. So even in my photography, there are so many elements from the classical that I derive and I influence my photography from. So that's been a constant process. Yeah.
Excellent. It's something very interesting you talk about, about Pandit Tanmoy Bose. It's interesting. The wedding that we went to was his son's
Yeah.
wedding, where I bumped into your mum. But I've seen something very interesting with, in terms of reverence for classical music, especially in our country, having grown up with all of these boys and their dads being these amazing musicians that that we saw growing up. There was a story that I can recall. So Tanmoy Kaku was on our campus here in Techno India a while back. This was maybe 6-7 years back, pre-COVID, and he was here for a debate competition or something completely unrelated to music.
I was there with him.
You were
Just
there
saying,
with him?
Yeah.
You were there on that day? So
Yeah.
after the show got over,
Yeah.
I told him, I have this studio I built. I was talking about Blooper House, and he's like, I've heard about it. Chal, amar nahi hai, chal. So I was like, okay, chalo. So I come in here. I'm entering the console room of the studio, and I don't know who's recording inside, whatever. I open the door, and a bunch of these, old school Calcutta rock musicians are there, right? So
Yeah.
Bumpy is
Oh,
there,
yes.
Gabu's there, all these, again, these other boys that we've grown up with, but who are all like at the top of the musical, ladders in the city.
Yeah.
And the moment Tanmoy Kaku walks into the studio, all of them get on their feet like Guruji,
Yeah.
and it's very interesting to see. These
Yes.
guys are like older than me, perhaps, but for all of them, because of Tal Tantru and because
Yeah.
of the work
Yeah.
that he's done in shaping, classical music for all of them.
Yes.
Irrespective of if they are not always part of the classical musical fraternity, all of them think of him as a guru.
Yeah.
And the same thing, I think, applies to most of the Gurushishya Parampara that happens across our country. So I want to know more about your relationship with your father, because we're talking about Gurushishya Parampara. You got into photography at a tender age of 6, you said, right? You were 6 years, even earlier
yeah,
than
earlier,
that.
yeah.
So in all essence, your father was your first guru,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What kind of a guru was he, and how did his principles affect the person that you turned out to be?
It makes me emotional anytime I have to speak about him. But it's a good thing. I think it's good to be emotional that way, because one, he was benevolent. He was benevolent about everything. And the second thing was he prioritized life over photography at any point of time. So that's one key lesson that I got back, and in retrospect it makes so much sense to me, is that photography, no matter how much we give importance to that medium as our profession, as a tool to archive, to document, to seek the truth, it's only going to be just a part of the larger story. The larger story is about the experiences that you have when you do photography. For example, I would go with him to these very, I would say, diverse terrains and very difficult cultures to work with. No language connection, no, like we are foreigners there. I remember the first assignment that I went to, and I took my dad along with me as my mentor. It was back in 2021 in November, in the beautiful landscapes of Tura, which is in the Garo Hills in Meghalaya. And they had this festival called the Wangala Festival, which is an invocation to their sun god Saljong. And they do that by playing 100 drums together without any rehearsal. And it reverberates throughout the valley, and the sound of it, the people, I mean, with different clans wearing different attires, it's beautiful. But then I recently posted about this on Instagram as well. So he would only take one shot and then just have some bamboo pork or enjoy some good tea, and he would be like, "Arey তুই ছবি তোল, আমার আর তো ভাল লাগছে না." Like, "বাবা তুমি বুড়ো হয়ে যাচ্ছ. I'm young blood. Let me do the thing." So I would take like 1,000 photos, and then while curating the photos, I would be like, "আরে 1,000টা ছবি তুললাম. I can't even select one. This old man, he has taken one shot and
actually
yes." So I was generally very confused. Where am I going wrong? So he said, "Basadon," like any Bengali dad would say, ki camera ta rakho আর একটু এই মাদলের মতো দেখতে যে drums, the Wangala drum is a huge log with skin, animal skin on both sides, like any other indigenous drum. So he told me ওইটা একটু উঠে একটু বাজাও তুমি দেখি একটু গুরুজির যা যা শিক্ষা পেয়েছো সেটার থেকে যদি একটু ওদের মতো বাজাতে পারো, just try to imitate the rhythm of the Wangala people, of the Garo people. And then I tried, and I had so much fun that I connected with so many people, and they were like, okay, this
boy
guy
also can play.
And more than that, they were like, okay, this guy can speak our language, and not in terms of the vocal language, but in terms of the musical, the beats and everything. He gets us. So then they started taking me to their, like the interiors, and the exploration just broadened like this much for me. I was an outsider. Now they treated me as someone who was curious about their culture. And so, I mean, this is
the
point.
relatability went up, and you became relevant in that.
I became
in the eyes
relevant
of those people.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's how it's so beautiful. I mean, wherever I go, I think I try to follow this principle. Before taking out the camera from my bag, I would just sit down with them and have a meal at least, and then the rest follows.
Because also it's about the human connection. At the end of the day, irrespective of what field you're in, whether you're doing business, you're still in the business of serving people. Right?
Yes.
If you're making music, you're in the business of entertaining people. Or if you're in the world of photography, then you're in the business of capturing people.
Definitely.
Does not really matter what it is that you do. At the end of the day, you have to understand the people. And if you look at the way that drums itself or percussive instruments have shaped up over time, if you look at African cultures and how the sound of the drum, the beat of the drum was used to celebrate all major moments in life, whether it be birth itself or marriage or a special occasion or death, doesn't matter. It is the sound, the repetitive sound waves of the drums which would bring people together.
Yes.
Right? Irrespective as far back in time as you can look at it.
Yeah.
Today, in our solitary existences in cities where we don't get that sense of community, this is why a drum circle or an ecstatic dance or an occasion like that where you get to be around each other in that kind of an environment seems so precious. Because your past life experiences and your ancestral experiences somehow get transmitted through your body, and like, oh my God, I have motion in me too. I have movement in me too. And it just takes a while till you figure it out. And praise be to all classical musicians and all musicians in general for creating the soundtracks of our lives, right? Otherwise, what would we be without music?
Absolutely. I so agree to that, Meghdut.
How was your relationship, or how has your relationship been with your second guru, with Tanmoy Kaku?
Oh yes, second guru not.
Second guru,
Guruji, ekdam.
Guruji,
But in parallel streams,
yes,
right. Baba was of course a very dear friend of my Guruji, and that's how he actually was friends with a lot of very key classical musicians from our city who made classical music relevant to the world. And I have to take the name of Jayanto Kaku, Acharya Jayanto Bose, with whom he was like a dear college friend. And Jayanto Kakuke আমি ছোটবেলা থেকে দেখতে থাকতাম. I mean, he's a multi-dimensional artist. He can play the harmonium as well as he can play the tabla, as well as he can sing. So just to see that entirety of a musician was very overwhelming for me. I did not know it was possible. And then I saw my Guruji, Pandit Tanmoy Bose, who was, in one concert I remember, Tal Tantrori concert, but he was joined by a Baul folk singer on stage, and then while playing his ganjira, a very nice dubkir motoi, but it's from the south, he started singing, and that was probably the first time through music that I had tears in my eyes that acha Guruji ko to I have seen him play the instrument, the tabla, in such a melodious tune. It does not look like it's percussion, it looks like the tabla sings, and now he's singing. So it made that perfect flow for me, that okay, wow, I mean, this is the man, this is how he is. And I went to him when I was really, really young, of course taken by my father, and the first thing he told me is that, do you see these two drumsticks? These are your antibiotics if you don't do riyaz. So riyaz was,
I do know about him being a hard taskmaster.
Oh yes.
সবার কাছে শুনেছি আমি।
খুবই
and that's also the reason why you get revered so much also, right? There has to be that sense of discipline. যে কোনো ক্লাসিক্যাল মিউজিশিয়ানের সাথে কথা বললেই দিনে 5-6 ঘন্টা প্র্যাকটিস না করলে কিরকম করে হবে?
একদম। And the fascinating thing is that For one, he would tell me the essentials of becoming a shishya. So if you take tutelage under me or in my umbrella, you need to be as mindful and as alert as a crow. And you know how the crow has been used even in Mahabharata. It has been used as the omnipresent factor. There's a crow everywhere looking at everything and being very, suspicious but also very curious. So
Vigilant.
vigilant, exactly. So Guruji Shate, we would, travel on a car. He would be driving. And then he would just read out this, let's say, for example, a konakkal from south of India, no relation to our North Indian Hindustani classical music at Padhant. And then he would say, after reading it out one time, okay, recite it again. And I would be like, Guruji, I just got to know this. And he would be like, no, you have to catch it. So we always are, even today when I'll be going to him right after this. So, he'll be doing some of that, like so something like that he would read out, and I would be like, okay, I need to just get it right now, right here. So yeah, that's been another very fascinating thing, Yeah.
I like when he talks about classical music, although that's not your primary identity. Your primary identity is still somebody who works in sustainability, somebody who works in photography. But I think when you talk about classical music, it somehow makes your eyes light up. So I think there's that beauty. I think that will always be part of you. It's now so deep ingrained within you that it shall never. And it's also, it's interesting. I have spoken to quite a few classical musicians. And I specifically mention classical musicians because let's also be honest. I think sadhana na hole mane shotti truly incredible music cannot probably be produced. And in the era of the internet, where it's very easy to auto-tune and create sort of music that, we saw what happened at the Jacob Collier concert with Anuv Jain getting on stage and making a shit show of the whole country's image in front of perhaps one of the most prolific musicians of our time. Jacob has been somebody who's shaped global music incredibly. তার ঠিক আগেই Anushka Shankar was playing on stage and Vijayashree was playing. ওখান থেকে মানে the downfall that happened, and that's just because of the whole world sort of pandering to the lowest common denominator of everything. It's just because you have access to AI music does not mean AI can or should at any point take over real musicians. And even talent like what Anuv has probably done a good job selling his music to people, but that does not make him a particularly good musician, unfortunately. So that's why I mentioned classical musicians, because classical musicians have that inherent ability of looking at the world through the lens of 6 hours of riyas every day for 10 years to even be referred to as a classical musician, let alone be a pandit, ustad. Right? That comes through time, experience, of course. And I have had the privilege of speaking to a lot of classical musicians and learning from them through conversation. And one thing that I have truly understood over time is this whole 10,000 hours. They say that unless and until you spend 10,000 hours doing something, you probably don't truly get the hang of it. I think for classical musicians, after 10,000 hours is when the real work begins.
Oh yes, even for photographers.
Right? So let's get to your photography journey a little bit. I'm actually curious about how that has made you better as a crow. How has photography made you a better crow?
The vigilant one.
A very vigilant one.
No, as you mentioned, Meghdut, the first 10,000 hours. So a very famous photographer, I think the forefather of street photography, he once mentioned, I'll take his name, Henri Cartier-Bresson from France. He mentioned that the first 10,000 photos that you take are rubbish. I do not believe that. I think for me personally, it has been a very self-reflective journey, so to say. So I do not look back at my photos and say, oh, how horrible of a job I've done. It's just the continuum. I mean, I've evolved from there, and I'm happy looking back and making sense of who I was back then and what kind of connection I had to the natural world and everything. So I don't think it's essentially bad, the first 10,000. It's your way to evolve. And
they still say some stories, right? As long as they still tell some stories and your stories, and you're able to contextualize it, I guess it
Yeah.
could still work. Right?
Yes, and I think one thing that I'm pondering upon more and more, and I've had long discussions with Pauline also regarding this, is to find the purpose in the work that you do. I'll be very honest, Meghdut, the sustainability has been used as a, like a flashy word throughout and across the country, and it's still happening. I mean,
It's just the beginning
yeah,
of the sustainability movement also in our country. We
yeah,
are so far behind,
yes,
any of the Western nations on our understanding
yeah,
of sustainability, let alone implementation
hmm,
thereof. Even now, most companies are not even, pushed to publish their reports, even most public companies,
yeah,
unless you're part of the, I think, top 1,000 companies in India to
right,
do it. But the rest, it's like an optional thing.
yeah,
And no
yeah,
wonder we live. I mean, look at the world around you. Look at Delhi, Bombay,
oh,
Calcutta. Right now, it's just a
terrible,
mess to even look
yeah.
outside your window on a
Hmm.
regular winter morning
Yeah, yeah.
and not feel a sense of despair. Like, oh my
Yes.
God, this is the place where we'll bring up our children. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's a bit of a scary thought. So,
Right.
how do you think your work as a storyteller, photographer, sustainability practitioner
Hmm.
could pave the way for someday having a country that understands sustainability better and working proactively towards creating a
Yeah.
better life for our future generations?
I think the key to start any story, I think, be it a huge, a story concerning the Arctic polar bears or a story concerning the elephants in Africa, you have to be very hyper local in your approach. I mean, you have to have a connect of a place, of a people, and of a community. And I think we miss that element when we see these huge shows on National Geographic, for example. We see that the polar caps are melting and global warming has started. We don't focus on our immediacy. I mean, the sparrows
Mm.
are, I mean, decreasing in number. I think in Ganga, for example, you have this entire huge problem of waste management, which is much more at a larger scale than the plastic pollution problem, which I think the government likes to focus on. And they do some, tokenistic initiatives regarding that.
Why do you
So,
think the government likes focusing on the plastic pollution issue more than the river pollution issue?
because plastic is trendy, I think that's the thing. I mean, you don't see the latent realities that the river faces, which, for example, I've been a witness to during my assignment with the National Geographic Society and the Nature Conservancy. I went to this place called Malda, that is on right on the borderlands of India and Bangladesh, where the river bifurcates towards Bangladesh. 70% of its flow is diverted towards Bangladesh. 30%, along with Bhagirathi, comes towards the Kolkata port, and it's cataclysmic. I mean, you have these riverine islands, you have people living on it, and you have these biannual floods that wipe out any sign of civilization from these islands. These people meander from the shores of Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, and Bangladesh. They don't have an Aadhaar card, they don't have a voter card, they don't have a ration card, they don't get relief funds because apparently the floods are not considered to be national emergency. So there are multiple problems concerning the river, and I think just focusing on Ganga Arati and just focusing on to making the ghats more beautiful is not going to solve majority of the problem concerning the river. I think I get very hit with the topic because I live right next to the river in Bagbajar. My house is right next to the river, so I can see the amount of the amount of sedimentation that comes
Mm.
due to mismanagement and of course colonial institutions. I mean, we really need to decolonize this entire narrative because these are all instruments by the
The
colonial
British, right?
Raj, the British Raj, which still exists and we don't question it. So I think, yeah, at one point of time, you have to focus on the hyperlocal. You have to bring it down to your locality. You have to tell those stories, create that impact, and get the government or the policymakers working on that. So, yeah.
This is why I love talking to young people. Just like in a 5-minute segment, Pubarun explained more to me about how he feels that our mother Ganges, on top of that,
Hmm.
Ma Ganga, is threatened, and just doing Ganga Arati is not going to solve the inherent problem of the pollution. So, as a young person working in the space of storytelling for a better tomorrow, let's put it
Yeah.
just simply that way. I guess that's the best way
Yes.
to explain what you do. Um, what are three things as normal citizens? Like here, we don't do the podcast to point our fingers at people and say, এটা করেনি ওটা করেনি তাই জন্য আজকে আমরা এরকম জায়গায় আছি না আমরা কি করতে পারি what can we as Calcuttans, let's start with us as Calcuttans, us as citizens of India, and as people who care about the environment, people who care about our sustenance on the planet, what can we proactively do help us break it down?
I think the first thing that you should do is to find connections with nature. I think there's one, segment of the current climate crisis that's going on, and we always think of it as a climate emergency and try to provide solutions. I think more than that, it should be about climate adaptability and climate resilience. So we have always lived with nature. We should go back to that, that lineage, those roots. Try to visit more indigenous communities living with nature. Try to get inspiration from them rather than putting those, all the concords of the West related to sustainability on them and saying, okay, follow these compliances and you'll be good to go. Rather, just how to live with nature should be the number one factor. As normal citizens, just go to the river. I mean, Kolkata has such amazing ghats. I don't know why people go to cafes other than Top Cat CCU to chill. I mean,
Nicely
just go and spend some time with your loved and dear ones and see what the river is about. You'll see the tea seller giving you a 10 taka lebu cha that you will not find anywhere else. You will see people, men and women alike. Yesterday we did a photo walk by the river and we saw the men and the women, they bath together in the river, and it has been like that for ages, for centuries. It's a behavioral thing. There is no part of it that concerns a gaze as well. I'm sure there will be some some segment or some segue for a feminist narrative there, but of course I don't want to say that people are uncomfortable. I mean, you talk to them, they have done this for centuries and they don't have that sense of I'm not comfortable in the other one's presence. So anyways, I was segueing a little bit, but that's one thing. I mean, spending time with nature. The second would be just to know more about what's going on with the current situation. I mean, just to be well informed about what's going on in your locality and the world, trying to get involved with organizations like the Rebalance Institute. I think it's a phenomenal initiative by Pauline, by you, and by the people of Calcutta who have come together to really do what they love, but also with a passion and a purpose. So I think young people like me, we want to do so many things about nature, about sustainability, but we really miss the narrative and we really miss the the opportunities,
perhaps.
the direction to do that. And I don't think I have a third one. It's just like
what
just,
do you do? Okay, let's bring the question back to you.
Yeah.
If you had all the resources in the world, and you've already created quite a few resources yourself as a young person who's well known in his field, and you've gotten a Forbes 30 under 30 at a young age of 21, so you're already doing perhaps more than most other young people are doing, because, or at least selling it well enough that people around you feel that you're doing something. But in any case, again, the reason I say that is because I don't know you super well, and this is a conversation through which I'm getting to know you. You speak with a lot of ingenuity and you speak with a lot of heart when you speak about this. What is it that you have made as your sort of go-to in this whole process? How do you deal with these plaguing problems with the climate crisis? What is your everyday battle? How does your everyday battle look like?
I think two things. One is that I want to make it personal. And I have to make it personal. It affects me, it affects my, close ones, and if it affects my community and my region. So it's very personal to me. I would suffer the brunt of the climate crisis. So it's my battle. So that's my narrative.
I think that's the only difference between the Gen Z and the millennials. The millennials, they'll be like, oh, it's the battle of the next future generations. Gen Z is like, apna time aa gaya hai. This is us for us to figure out.
Yes. I think, and I don't see people not working in tandem, I mean, I also work with so many millennials and boomers.
And boomers. Sorry, I was talking about boomers. That was very boomer of me. Although I'm not a boomer, but I mentioned boomers instead of calling calling them boomers, I call them millennials. Oh well, I'm also not getting any
Millennials on their
younger.
way to become boomers, but
Yeah. Thanks, Pubarun.
yeah.
Really appreciate it. But anyway, we'll get to Gen Z, the
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
Gen Z
yeah.
millennial situation a bit later.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, let's continue. Let's continue on this
Yeah,
thread.
yeah, yeah. So one is making things personal,
Personal, yeah.
and the second thing is, irrespective of the sector that you're in, try to connect with everyone. The only reason that I find so much solace and so much confidence sitting here and talking to you is because I don't really want to judge anyone based on the things that they do. For you it's easier, for me because you are kind of like an inspiration. You are an inspiration. But for a person, let's say, working in the venture capitalist sector, as a venture capitalist, sorry, if I want to alienate them from myself just with the thought that okay, they have not done anything about what I am passionate about, so let me just not talk to them at all, that is a very wrong approach to take. I think people should have more conversations. That's what I do. I think I go to corporates, I go to government agencies, I go to people I'm very frustrated with, and I'm like, hey, please, let's have a conversation. Please, I beg you, let's just talk.
Yeah.
And while talking, I think they also get a hang of, okay, this guy is not faking it. I mean, he is actually passionate. He's not putting it on his CV, and he's not trying to be that, I want to go to this Edinburgh University. That's why I'm just, writing about sustainability. He lives by the river and he has been affected by it a little bit. So they also take me a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of exhibitions. I have this display of sorts in my university, Ashoka University. And I've gotten so many people, young folks, come up to me and ask me about the Ghats of Kolkata. They all know about the Ghats of Benares. They don't know about the Ghats of Kolkata. So they're like, oh, what is Mullik Ghat? What is, Badam Tola? What is like Bagbajar? And I say, okay, kid, come here. Let me tell you a story. So that's how I start.
So গল্প বলা দিয়েই তো সব শুরু. I
একদম.
think all of it, and I like the approach. See, again, ego sometimes takes the better of us, or used to, let's say, in the previous generations, would prohibit us from having a conversation face to face with those that affect us in a negative way, because like, oh na ki bolbe, or speaking to somebody in power and trying to get something out of that conversation was something very different, because also age hierarchies were treated very differently back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Now, because of the fact that social media and information availability for people is the same throughout. In fact, you guys have an easier way of dealing with information or finding the right kind of information. I think a lot of the older generations might sometimes feel a bit irrelevant because they don't really know where to get their information from, or the kind of information they get is fed to them by big corporates, and they can't figure out from the difference between what's fake news and what's real news. And at the end of the day, perhaps there is no absolute truth. I don't think an idea of absolute truth exists, because at the end of the day, all institutions are still owned by some people, right? Or funded by some people. So it is on us to sort of figure out what our truth is, right? And what is the truth that we want to live by, that creates our version of reality. And if young people like you come and show মানে ওই চোখে আঙুল দিয়ে দেখানো যেটাকে বলে না, to both the generations. So একটা যেটা বললে যে kids come up to you and say, and then you say, kid, let me come and tell you about the Ghats of Kolkata. And the same way you're doing that with the corporates, with the older generations, with the government agencies. তাদেরও চোখে আঙুল দিয়ে দেখাচ্ছিস. I'm just asking you a question from a pure point of view of somebody who's curious about what the future holds for us as young people, etc. So I think it's a brave approach. I think it's also an approach that's only possible now. It's not perhaps an approach that would have been possible when I was 20, or maybe I was 10 years old, 15 years old. Perhaps now it's a lot more accessible in that way. And I think the older that you all get, I'm sure when we have kids, they are going to have it a lot easier in terms of asking questions to power. Because power structures over the world are also evolving with time. We did see what happened with the Gen Z protests in Nepal. We also saw what happened in Bangladesh. We saw how when power gets too comfortable, you Gen Zs have a way of sort of snatching it back and taking things back into your control. The method of doing that, I will not talk about that. I don't think violence is perhaps the issue, but maybe in some ways.
No, I agree to you on that.
Because again, the way of doing it also matters. But you do see at the end of the day that power structures, it happens in crests and troughs, right? At some
Yeah.
point when it gets too cumbersome for people
Yeah.
to understand or to abide by, then people will break down
Mm-hmm.
those power structures. And thanks for doing that on behalf of all the millennials going on to become boomers. Thanks for doing it the right way. That's the same thing I would say to my sister, who's 10 years younger than me. And I remember when she was in school, she was studying at Modern High. I was not in town. I think I was still living in Europe, and I saw a photo of her on the front page of the Telegraph with like a seizing the future,
Wow.
or like some Fridays for Future stuff
Yeah,
that
yeah.
she was protesting. I felt so proud. I was like,
Yeah.
wow,
Yes.
this little kid skipped school to go and protest
Yeah.
for the environment. I mean,
Yes.
in my time, I was probably not going to be doing that, and I'm glad that you all do that. So anyway, end of a very long monologue about why I love Gen Z so much, and this is why I hire them all the time. My team is like, the average age of my team currently is like 25.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you've been in touch with a few of my team members.
Of
So
course.
they're very young.
Yeah. My tribe.
Your tribe, yeah. Let's talk about tribes. Good
Yeah.
segue, nice. Let's talk about the tribes of Bengal to start with. Talk to me a little bit about your run-ins with them and about privilege. I want to understand from a young person of privilege. Let me take the let me take the assumption that you are a privileged person. You're sitting here in a Bershka jacket, and we will talk about the Bershka jacket at the end before we leave, because you have worn
sweat beads coming off my
I told you will not have it all easy.
No, I appreciate it.
But same way that you would not let me have it
Yeah.
easy, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not.
yeah.
We didn't come here to not question each other on our
Yes.
choices. You did wear a leather jacket by being a part of the sustainability tribe, so you will be questioned about it.
Sure.
But tell me about your run-ins with the tribes and how you think the future affects them. Does it affect them differently from the way that it affects you, or it will affect your children? And are there ways of acclimatizing that meter, or rebalancing that, for the lack of a better word, for the futures of the tribes of our state, of our country, through some of the work that you do?
Yes, Meghdut, I think you rightly pointed out that, of course, let alone my, economic and financial backing, the moment I go to a place with a camera in my hand, I am in a place of power and privilege. So I have to be very wary of that fact. I have to be super careful. I don't want to tread a boundary that's not meant to be treaded. I don't want to be a photographer that's remembered for that $1 million picture, but the backstory of it is not that good. I mean, there are multiple I can name, but I've not had much run-ins with the indigenous communities in Bengal. I've of course documented the very revered Parvati Baul, Parvati
I
Ma.
love her.
Yeah.
I love her.
And the experience that I've had there, while of course they practice their music, and the way they practice, the mode they practice, in sitting in that akhada, surrounded with so much good positive energy, has been truly grateful. But I've been truly grateful. But I'll tell you about this one incident where I drove with my parents, my mom and my dad, all the way to Chhattisgarh, to this really small little district called Janjgir Champa. We were on the lookout for this sect of Dalits called Ramnami. And the way they get that name, Ramnami, is because through a period of 200 years, they were oppressed by the Mughals to not practice their religion. And then their temples were destroyed. They were not allowed to chant the name of Ram. And Ram, of course, as you can imagine right now, has been used by a lot of different parties and organizations and entities in India for all the wrong reasons. But this one is a story of resilience and of taking back power. So, of course, they were not allowed to practice the religion. So, what this one person called Parasuram, he did is that one morning he got up and he chanted the name and he tattooed his entire body with the name of Ram. So if you see them, they're entirely tattooed. Their faces are tattooed. The inner lip is tattooed. Their entire body is tattooed with the name of Ram, 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 Ram. And it's beautiful to look at. I mean, for me, I mean, as a photographer, as a person seeking human connections. So I went there. It took me 2 days to find them, and I finally met Parasuram's son, who is Kartik Ramji, who is 78 years old now. I think he's 81, and he sung this beautiful Ram bhajan to me, and it was beautiful. It
Do you
was
remember the
really.
bhajan?
I can't sing if my life depended on it, but I'll definitely share a link with you. But it was beautiful. They have this Ram festival, the bhajan festival that they do in January as well. I would highly recommend for everyone to go and visit the place, Janjgir Champa, which is close to the capital of Raipur in Chhattisgarh.
I was born, but not very far away from that.
Really? Where?
Bilaspur.
Acha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe somehow you might have like had an encounter with.
I have not,
some-
unfortunately. I have not had a
Acha.
chance to go back to the place where I was born. It just
Okay.
it happened because my dadu was part of the eastern coalfields, so
Oh,
they
yeah.
were across the coal
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
belt. And my dida is from Raipur, so
Acha.
they're from the
Acha.
Raipur family, the somewhat semi-royal family, I think,
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
exists there. But very interesting. So it almost feels like this guy probably looked like that character that Amir Khan played in Ghajni. Right?
Well,
Like
I mean,
tattooed.
to put it that way, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
because-
for a reference, definitely like Ghazni. But I'll tell you that something happened that really, I think, shaped the way I look at myself in the mirror. I am being too philosophical right now as a Gen Z, but I have to be. So, when I entered his house, the first instinct of a 78-year-old man was to come with a ghati of water and try to wash my feet along with my my parents. And I was really taken aback, and I just got him up and I gave him a really nice warm hug, and I saw his body crunch
Mm.
because of course of the practice of untouchability.
Yeah.
And he never expected for an urban folk to come there and do this. And more than a gesture, it was the touch which he did not expect. So
And also social conditioning, right? Like
Yeah.
that touch for him must have
for
been
him, yeah.
very-
And I was very naive and young, and of course I knew a lot about the caste system, but I never knew how it was practiced to this bit in rural India, and it still is, I would say. So I mean, what once used to be the marker of resistance, the tattoo of Ram, right now the younger generation do not practice that, because for them it's a marker of taboo. If they go to an urban space and they try to work in a corporate job and people see that they're tattooed with the name of Ram, they would almost instantly be ostracized and otherized and put in a sector.
in the same
And-
country where
Yeah, in the
Jake-
same country where all of this is happening. So it's unfortunate, but it's a reality. I think to acknowledge that reality is our first step. So for any indigenous community that we are interacting with, be it through sociological or anthropological or a photographic, segue, I think we need to be really, really understanding, caring, empathetic, and just cognizant of what we are doing.
Let's talk about the caste system a little bit. And I think
Mhm.
this is not a conversation I've had very much on this podcast. My run-ins with people's idea about the caste system and its existence actually happened much after I had left India.
Okay.
And this my first 20 years of growing up in Calcutta, I never for once had a direct run-in with it.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. I'm an urban kid living in a big city.
Mm.
This was not part of the conversations. I
Yeah.
mean, yes, of course, social differences, social inequality, I'd seen all of that. The caste system itself was not something that I had a direct impact on, or I did not see it. And maybe that was my naivety in play also. And I think I was 21, 22 years old maybe, and I was in Europe. And I think it was Pauline's grandmother who had asked me that question, like, what do you think of the caste system in India? And at that point, I had very, naively again said, oh, you know what, it doesn't really exist in the same way it does before. Because I hadn't had a lot of direct connection with it. And then the older I got in the last 10 years, I've gotten to realize that it's probably hidden very well,
Yeah.
but it still exists through so many layers.
Mm.
And there's still a very big reason for which reservation in all ways and forms is still needed in a country like India
Yeah.
to rebalance the way that society functions. You have probably been exposed to the caste system and its evils, perhaps, or
Yeah.
whatever you may want to put it. I don't want to put words in your mouth. tell me about your experience with the caste system as a young person, and how would you reply to that question that Pauline's grandmother had asked me 12 years ago, if you had a chance, if you were in that room?
I just want to state that please pardon my ignorance because I'm still learning about it. But from what I've experienced, talked to people, my university was a great space to have those discussions with an open mind, because all of the people around me, the students, they were also hugely a representation of the diversity that we have in India. I think personally, it was. I mean, the way caste evolved was through categorizing people into professions and community into professions. If I look back at my own caste, I am a part of a subcaste that existed in Bengal called the Kulin Kayosto. And yeah, I need to know about it. I think that's how I went back, and I got to know that these were archivists at courts. So maybe somehow my profession connected through that lineage. But I still am quite, I'm just learning about it. But I can definitely talk about the realities of the caste system. For one, I think it's spread out more in the urban spheres than we realize. The type of otherization that you face in an urban space, even in a university, is very, I would say, underlying but very evident. Only a person who belongs to such a section would be able to, properly justify the experience that they have. It's a very personalized experience, I would say. And no matter what class of society you belong to, even if you're a very wealthy person, you are otherized. You are, just discriminated against. So that's my overall inference of it. I don't think I'm equipped enough to answer anymore, but just to keep an eye out and to be empathetic and to also know about your own identity. I mean, as a Brahmin person, if someone goes and just tries to pretend that there's nothing that exists just because he does not follow the caste system, would be not really a good thing to do. It would just be ignorance. So yeah, just to sit down, have those conversations, know about each other, and try to make ways for people to become more inclusive, I think would be the right way to go. I hope I answered that. I mean,
you
yeah,
did to the best of your ability, and it was
I
not
think.
some. There's no right or wrong
Yeah, of course.
answer
of
here. I
course.
mean, as long
Yeah.
as you're not punching down, I think there is
Yeah,
no
yeah.
wrong answer. Everything else can be allowed.
Yeah.
If you're insensitive about it, then
Mm-hmm.
you would have been called out. So that's okay. Let's talk a little bit about your fame that came from being the young photographer awardee in 21. Do you think early fame got to you at any point? Do you think, as a young person who suddenly got a lot of recognition, and then exhibitions followed, and the pathway to doing good opened up? Were there points in which you thought that you were teetering at the brink of losing yourself or losing your path, and did anything happen at that point which made you recalibrate?
My father slapped the arrogance out of me. I think that's what happened. And my mom, on the other hand, was my biggest hype woman. So she was like, okay, my son has really become the rising star. So, oh wow, এই মিষ্টি নে, এই নে, ওই নে, newspaper ছবি আসছে, oh my god, look at this. Priya, look at this, and all of that,
Who's Priya?
I don't know. Maybe some of her friends. I don't know. But that was
Angel
the
Priya.
yeah.
Okay.
So that's what was happening. But my dad was really, he was a tough person, tough nut to crack for me. He was like, what have you done? Not in a very, like a negative way. I understood it even back then, not in retrospect right now. But he used to tell me that, okay, your photography journey has just started. Now you're going to get the opportunities that you would have deserved.
But it would have come to you a bit later in life, perhaps.
Yeah.
When you.
So just try to get a hold of yourself and just go out there and do more impactful projects. I mean, a photographer is defined by the body of works that they produce, bodies of work that they produce. And I think for me, it was that one, correct direction that my dad and Guruji, Pandit Tanmoy Bose, they both gave me, is to also always be sharing in the way that you understand yourself. So I always thought about it this way: okay, if I have this opportunity, a grant, maybe I can use it to empower a community while I am also being empowered. So I do not want to put it that simply, but in 2020, if you remember, when COVID first hit, Northeast was prone to a lot of discrimination
Yes.
because of the facial features that they owned, and people thought that COVID had come from China, and these people, the northeastern people, our people from India, they were responsible for it. So my only aspiration or my vision for doing that project in Meghalaya was to let people know, okay, I've gotten there, I've connected with them, and they're your people. I mean, look at the culture, look at the traditions. It's so vivid, and they practice almost a similar religion. I mean, yeah, very different in the approach, but yeah, you can connect with them. Do not just make mainland India as the main thing, and even like South has been quite ostracized that way, but even the Northeast. So I mean, a lot of that happened.
It doesn't help that India is such a multicultural land, right? Like
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have
yeah.
every 100 kilometers potentially another, sub language, and then you have a whole different culture. Even if you were praying to the same gods and goddesses, if you look at it from Bengal to Delhi, like
Yeah.
North India to South India, even if you're praying to the same god, you do it in such a different way.
Different way. Yeah,
Right, the
yeah.
way that you look at, even
Yes.
if you go to a temple in South India, the way that their
Yeah.
gods look are also so very different from the way that our
Yeah.
gods look, but they're the
Definitely.
same gods, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's, of course, it doesn't help on that. And I mean, I'm really glad that some of these shows nowadays, I think I was seeing Family Man,
Yeah.
the new season deals a lot with Nagaland
Yes.
and Manipur, a lot of the Northeast.
And Jaideep Ahlavat acted in Patal Lok as the
Right.
police
And
who was in
here-
Nagaland, and here he is as the villain.
Yeah, he does such a great job.
Oh my God, yes,
I'm such a
yes.
big fan. But it shows the vast of his skill
Yeah.
as well. I want to hear about your. So you've been to Ashoka, which is also a place of significant privilege. I think it's of course it's still a bit of a bubble when you look at India. But at the same time, because you were a Young India Fellow, so of course the Young India Fellow pays for a lot of his students to come from
Yeah.
underserved communities
Yeah.
and people who would normally not be able to come to an Ashoka University.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your understanding of India, of Bharat, of grassroots Bharat, by being in places like that, one. And two is, how are you treated as a Bengali / Calcuttan in your rising star avatar when you're doing work outside of the state or the city? Two parts.
Yeah, yeah. I think for the first part, when I checked into Ashoka, the hostel, the person who opened the door just looked at me and he said, "Hey, why are you late?" And then I got to understand that his name was Balaji, and Balaji Ramakrishnan. And then when I got to know him, I got to know that he is a Katai Kuttu artist. Living in the same room, he was, an artist from Kanjipuram, who would do these all-night shows dressed in his own avatar. I mean, the closest representation that I can give to you would be the Kathakali attire, where your face is painted, you have a headgear, and you have a fully blown-up costume. So he was that artist, and it was for me 1 year of unlearning about art, the way they practice art, as in the Kataikutta performers, and the way he, does the rhythm of it. I mean, he has this way of just exponentially rising in rhythm and then putting it in a crescendo. And we don't do that. I mean, for Indian classical musicians, it's always one metronome, and you do not go here and there. But you can do a lot of, improvisations
around,
inside it. So that was one part of it. I mean, my roommate was this crazy artist, and then a lot of people in my batch They were all, Delhi University graduates, St. Stephens and all
So
of
smart
that. So
cookies.
smart people, and a couple of foreigners as well. There was this one person from Nigeria. So a lot of, cultural, I would say, acculturization happened during that fellowship. But larger Ashoka, including the undergrads, would of course be, and please don't kill me for this, the founders, it is a bubble. But it's a good kind of a bubble also. I mean, it's based in Sonipat. So if you don't have a bubble, you only have a couple of buffaloes left and arid land. So you need to have some substance in the campus.
I mean, there's the
So
OP Jindal campus a little bit on the other
yeah,
side, but it's
I don't
still.
know if we love them or hate them,
Well,
but
okay.
yeah.
I'll leave your local Harvard Yale strife to yourselves.
Harvard of Haryana.
Yeah, Harvard of Haryana. Sonepat ka Stanford.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get back to the
Second
point.
part. Yeah. What was the second part? I'm
The
sorry.
second part was about your experience of being a young Bengali Calcuttan
Yeah.
on the rise outside, because the way that stereotypes affect, do
Yes.
they affect? Do you hear things that are people taken aback by where you come from or the kind of work that you do?
In my university, my chancellor and vice chancellor are both Bengali, so I have
Yeah, of course.
premium dominance there. But then outside of that, in Delhi, I have to admit, and Meghdut, you have talked about this so many times with other guests I've been hearing your podcast. It's basically the decline of Bengal, and that's exactly the narrative that's being flown out there. And I don't know if it's misinformation. I don't know if it's reality. I am no person to judge, but I think that narrative needs to be shifted in some capacity. I mean, just imagine photography, just imagine Indian classical music, the only two disciplines that I'm so stringent on. Both of these are dominated by Bengali musicians and Bengali photographers. You have someone like my Guruji, you have someone like Pandit Tejendranath Mujumdar, you have Pandit Shubhankar Banerjee, who very unfortunately left us.
Pandit
But
Shubhen Chatterjee,
Shubhen
Pandit
Chatterjee,
Bikram Ghosh,
Vikram Ghosh,
so
who was
many
on your
incredible-
podcast.
Of course.
So
yeah.
it's, and Bengali musicians are the literate musicians. I have to
So
put
many
it that
of
way.
them. I mean, hey, we are going
Yeah.
to get cancelled on this podcast.
Oh God, I'm
by
sorry.
making sweeping statements by this. All statements made on this podcast by Pubarun are Pubarun's own and by of himself. He's going to get ostracized from his community. No, they're all very literate. I understand the sense of where you come from.
Yeah.
We do take academic interest in our hobbies as well,
Yeah.
as much as we do in occupation. I'm just going to nuance what you said so that
Definitely.
you don't get cancelled.
Thanks.
And I think that's what Pubarun is trying to say. Young people get excited sometimes and make sweeping assumptions and statements. I'm sure that's not what he means. He also means that we Bengalis, like, we also take adda so passionately, right? We talk about everything and anything under the sun with so much interest and vigor. We make it part of our identities. And that's what makes us inherently Bengali. We are not going to be ashamed of that bit, right?
Yeah.
So I think that also percolates into our work, into our art, into our culture, into everything that we stand for. So I'm not surprised you think that way. But I also believe that this mayor campaign against Calcutta and Bengal is very intentionally done by the larger national media to show us in a negative light. It's not as the realities here are not as bad as this year.
Yeah.
I mean, even last week we had news coming in that just owing to the Durga Puja festival, just owing to the world's largest public art festival, now Bengal had 31 lakh foreign tourists this year, which brings it to second place. And then the moment that news comes out, suddenly a whole slew of comments like, "Oh, it's all Bangladeshis." No, it's like people from the US and from the UK and Germany who've come here to visit the festival, and then they've were gone into the tea tourism. They've gone into Sundarban for visiting the mangrove forests, or they've gone to Darjeeling, and it's just sad sometimes almost. On somebody's post this morning, I said I saw somebody's 17-year-old sister has probably said something like, "Oh, it's just Calcutta is the only place perhaps where its own people are its own biggest enemies," or something like that, and which really struck me back. It was like, we don't take an active call on trying to change our image. It's a bit like, amar jodi বাড়ির পাশের বাগানটা যদি লোকে ময়লা ফেলা শুরু করে আর
Yeah.
আমি যদি কিছু না করি ময়লাটা পরিষ্কার করার জন্য,
Yes.
তাহলে আর আমি কি করলাম?
Exactly.
তার বলি যে না ভাই, এটা তো গভর্নমেন্ট করেনি, এটা তো
হ্যাঁ।
কর্পোরেশন করেনি, এটা মিউনিসিপ্যালিটি করেনি, এইটা
Yeah.
যে ঠেলাওয়ালাটা ও করেছে। আমি যদি
হ্যাঁ,
অন্যের দিকে সবসময় হাত তুলতে থাকি তাহলে আমরা কি করলাম? So we have to
একদমই।
celebrate our wins.
Yeah.
And it's not a small win. The
It's a
second
huge win.
largest
Yeah.
foreign tourist population in the country after
Yes.
Maharashtra. Like
Yeah.
crazy, right? Let's
Yeah.
take all the credit where
Absolutely.
credit is due. Let's rub
Yeah.
it in the faces of people also who say that এখানে কলকাতা কিছু হবে না, কেন করছি আমরা? So from that perspective, I think the fact that we started this podcast early on, now it's already our 4th year of doing the podcast. Now people are talking about it.
Yeah.
Every party, every social gathering I go to, people are like, oh, you're the guy who talks, cannot stop talking about Calcutta. I'm like, yes, I am that guy who doesn't stop talking about Calcutta.
Proudly that guy.
So proud to be that
Yeah.
guy. And now you're seeing, I've been গলায় রক্ত উঠিয়ে চিল্লাচ্ছি last 4 বছর ধরে এখন, because some of these videos have gone viral, so
Yeah.
people see it. And I'm glad. আমি তো করতেই
Yes.
থাকবো. I'm doing it because I love doing it.
Absolutely.
I'm doing it. I get more courage because young people like you are coming forward and you have your stories to tell. It would have been nice if you were the youngest person on the show, but you're not. Far from it, because we get all the students from Teach for India and we learn so
Wow.
much from them.
Yeah,
once
I've
every
seen
while.
those episodes,
You've seen
yes.
those episodes,
Yeah,
right? Those
yeah.
special episodes we put out with kids,
Brilliant.
underserved kids
Yeah.
from the communities talking about their version of Calcutta. And
Yeah.
I'm like, yaar, in logo ke liye karna chahiye.
Yes.
Forget everything else. Forget about the people who have already done it, who are already at the top of the ladder. Of course, we're going to talk about them, talk about their stories, how they're making Calcutta relevant. But with the younger people, if you are not having that communication, same way that you talk to younger people,
Right.
otherwise, how do you know about the world?
Yeah, yeah.
Same way you talk to older people. 8 থেকে 80 সবার সাথে কথা বলতে
সবার
হবে।
সাথে।
On that, Pubarun, last question, because I had started off on the topic of your leather jacket.
Yes.
I'm going to nuance that question, and I'm
Alright.
not going to put it against you. I have also worn a leather jacket once in a while, and I am also a meat eater. I am very intentionally so. I like my meat. We are in Bengal, we're in Calcutta. But I do remember during the beginning of COVID, one day Pauline made a statement at home which brought our entire family's impressions of who she was as a person to a standstill for a few days, where she declared that she was going to turn vegetarian.
Oh yeah.
And my very Bengali mother was like, "Hey, but mach to khabe." And I think as a Bengali mom, for her, it was unimaginable that her daughter-in-law was going to be vegetarian. I mean, vegetarian is fine, but fish is so vegetarian.
Yeah. Pescatarian though.
Pescatarian to hai. She does eat eggs though, but it took a while for her. Like every time we would sit for a meal, like, chingni mach tak to khena, but nah, ami to vegetarian. But when the whole feeling was like, hey, mach to vegetarian hona.
Yeah.
Anyway, so on that note, as somebody working in sustainability, how do you deal with the image that people would want you to portray versus also being a young kid of your age? If you want to wear a leather jacket once in a while, or if you want to eat meat, I mean, there is no reason to get cancelled. I perhaps don't live, I'm not from that time, from that culture. How do you deal with the idiosyncrasies of a young kid who cares about the world?
It's tough, and but also at the same time, it's not a checklist, right? Like I do these things right, so I'm spared from the cancellation. I mean, it's a constantly evolving process. I mean, you get to know about things every day. You get to learn about the concept of sustainability evolving in India, and that's how you also attain to what is required of you. But this jacket, for example, I thrift everything I own these days. So this is thrifted, this is my sister's that I got. But that in no way justifies the leather industry. I mean, I have to say that, of course, mass production, fast fashion, everything is, I mean, we just need to get more aware. And once we do that, and I think it's a very easy road for us to choose, our battles. So for me, it's the same. I also consume meat. I have to, because, for example, I was in Kyrgyzstan, and oh my God, I hope I don't get cancelled here. But I had horse meat. I had to taste it. I mean, it was a cultural thing. They have horse meat, they have horse milk. So I
Horse
had
milk.
Yeah, horse
Was it
milk
tasty?
it makes you punch a wall after you have had it. So it fills you up with adrenaline. You're super hyper. But yeah, I did all of that because I wanted to connect. And I know I can't restrict myself at this point in my career because there are some times when people get offended if you don't have something
If you're in
from their culture.
somebody's house and you don't
Yeah.
abide by the rules of the house, then there is
Huh.
a chance you might.
Bengali moms get offended if you don't have fish. So, I mean, similarly,
Same logic, yes.
Kyrgyzstani moms get offended if you don't have horse meat. So, I had to do it for the sake of documentation. But yeah, I mean, there are small steps that I'm taking as well in terms of.
At least you're giving these things a second life. I think I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
this one is I think fifth.
Fifth?
Yeah. It's
First four
yeah,
people who decided to throw it away are
Yeah, look
dumb.
at this. It's quite
such
old.
a nice jacket. Like,
Yeah, I know, right?
I picked
It's
something up
mint
like this a
condition.
little bit. You're from a thrift shop in, I think it was in Switzerland or somewhere.
That's right.
It was like this old, like long leather, like old school leather jackets.
Yeah,
but like
yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
feel like leather.
Right.
The suede, like the suede.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like
Yeah.
this super
Yes.
long one for like $60, and I went back and I put it on my chat GPT and was like, how much was this original jacket when it was sold? And it found out it was from it's like 70 years old, made
Ooh,
from like
wow.
some very
Super
rare
vintage.
like super vintage. It was like
Yeah.
a 2,500 euro jacket.
Oh my god.
I was like, why has somebody thrown this away?
Yes.
Like just because it had like a hole somewhere which could have been
Yeah.
patched. Like
Yeah.
so we jugadus, we find a way to
Definitely.
make everything work
Yeah.
in that way. But that's great. Actually, that was not the last question. I did have something else in mind that I wanted to ask, and I've always been curious about this, about your take on this. So a lot of photographers, when you're capturing, say, war,
Hmm.
or when you're capturing the plight of an endangered animal on the verge of getting eaten, let's say, and your professional conscience says that you must capture it, but your personal conscience probably says otherwise, how do you react? And is there a moral code here? Is there a discipline that you follow when it comes to this?
Kevin Carter took his own life after winning the Pulitzer Prize for a picture that he took of this vulture with a little girl in Sudan. And I think that's one story that really haunts me, but also asks me all the time in my conscience. It's like this one tagging question: will you be able to live with this, the story behind the image after you've captured it? So I think that's just another pragmatic decision that I take. No matter how big of an assignment, if it's Nat Geo, if it's, I don't know, some other organization, BBC or something, I do not prioritize the assignment over the human connections. I think there's a long way to go for me. I can't put it as a roadblock right now, and I can't live with the fact that I have failed a community that I've documented and connected. So for me, it's always, the latter. I prioritize over humanity, human connections. And this is something that my father taught me. So I have to abide by this if I'm his son.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of another episode of the Make Calcutta Relevant Again podcast. I had a very, very succinct, unfiltered conversation with somebody who takes his roots very seriously, somebody who takes his work very seriously, but most of all takes the human connection and his pursuit thereof very seriously. To all the young viewers out there, if you're watching this podcast, there's a lot to learn from somebody like Pubarun. He has managed to come onto the podcast at a very young age, primarily, and I would attribute this to the fact that he's very good at pattern recognition. He's very able to take from multiple disciplines and things that he sees in his life and put that into his work, from be it classical music or to photography or to storytelling, and combine all of that to create the story of his life. And I think the older we get, the less this term, jack of all trades, master of none, seems to make sense, because we live in a gig economy. We live in a world where people have multiple professions, multiple hustles, side hustles, occupations, hobbies, and all of those combine together to make us human, to make us who we are. So when you're watching this episode, don't hesitate to reach out to Pubarun, ask him questions about his life along the Ganges, and from the entire Make Calcutta Relevant Again team, here's wishing Pubarun all the success in his years. He's young, he's passionate, and most importantly, he's intentional about the change that he wants to see in this world. And he won't get very far unless all of you and all of us support him and push him along the way. May he continue making his father and his Guruji proud and making his mom very, very happy for every time a photo of him comes out on the newspapers. On that, we draw this episode to a close. Thanks, Pubarun, for joining us on this.
Thank you, Meghdut. It has been a real pleasure just getting to know you. And this mutual exchange has been lovely, lovely. Thank you for the questions.
Thank you so much. See you all on the next episode of Make Calcutta Relevant Again, the podcast. This is Meghdut signing off. Make Calcutta relevant again. You already know. Relevant again.